Either you are going to use social media or social media is going to use you. There is no in between. So if you are using it as a vehicle to connect and to collaborate and to contribute, social media can be incredibly useful and powerful. But if you're just using it as something as a distraction or to randomly decide to consume content, then make no bones about it. Social media is using you as another data point to help strengthen its algorithms to then direct its messaging toward other people that fit in your demographic circles and boxes that you check. And in that case, it can become pretty harmful.
Hello, and welcome to our Smart Social Superintendent Spotlight, where we feature incredible district leaders to address some very hot topic questions we received from parents across the country. I'm Andrea Allen with Smart Social. It is our mission to help parents keep their child safe and successful online. Today, we are honored to have with us Superintendent PJ Caposey with Meridian Community Unit School District number 223 and Oregon CUSD 220.
I am PJ Caposey. I am superintendent of schools for two districts that are completely independent, don't share boundaries, but reside within the same county. So I'm superintendent of Oregon 220, which is a pre-K-12 district of about 1,450 students in Oregon, Illinois, which is in the northwest portion of the state. And I am also superintendent of Meridian 223, which is very similar in size and demographic. Again, about 1,450 students in the northwest part of Illinois in Ogle County.
Welcome, and thank you for joining us on our podcast episode.
Thank you so much, Andrea. I'm glad to be here.
We are happy you're here. Today, we are going to cover some of the topics and questions parents are asking us and have our superintendent here share with us some of your insights and your learnings so together we can build resilient kids. We're going to go ahead and just get started with our first question. We are going to discuss disappearing messages. This is a very hot topic that parents need answers on how to address. And we're going to jump in with the first question here. How can parents start a conversation with their child about risks of using disappearing messages?
Well, I think the first part of starting the conversation is understanding that most kids, unless their parents have been very proactive and limiting or prohibiting certain types of social media use, are probably better versed on ephemeral or disappearing messages than they are. It doesn't take long, even for kids in second, third, fourth, fifth grade, which for me is too young to be on social media, but that's for my kids. It's not me passing judgment on anyone else's kids who happen to be there. But for them to start to understand in the gravity and the impact that these disappearing messages may have. And so to start the conversation, I think is just simple as that, is to start the conversation. The kids are already going to give you examples. You're not going to have to create random examples and scenarios because they likely, unless you're having the conversation with a 5-year-old, are going to be able to give you examples of how this has already played out and created drama at the lunch table, the recess table, or at the slumber party.
It's so true. They are in it. They have already experienced this. That's such a great point. Do you have any examples of a situation where disappearing messages created an issue that impacted a student's life and that maybe teachers, counselors, or you have had to get involved?
It depends on which way you're looking at a student's life. So we have not dealt with something that has been dire or necessarily emergent. But I will tell you, and I'm not saying this flippantly, when a student is 13, 14, 15, 16 years old, what they are thought of socially and how they're engaging with their peers and their teammates and their classmates is their entire life. And so from that standpoint, literally every day we deal with this in terms of so-and-so said this on whichever platform it happens to be on, and it happened off of school grounds, so it's not really related to school, but it's tying into school. And now all of a sudden, an entire group of kids or entire class of kids, an entire team of kids, everything is disrupted because what they see as the entirety of their life, which is often built around their social connections and the social norms, are disrupted because of something somebody said in a flippant sense, sometimes accidentally, sometimes incredibly intentionally and with mean spirit, and other times just kind of kids being kids and some negative toxic behaviors that exist dramatically impact kids' lives. And I mean this at the absolute root essence level. Now that might, and hopefully doesn't ever get to be a true dire situation or an emergent situation, but we are ruining days and we are ruining weeks and we are ruining proms and homecomings in every school across America every day. It's just a matter of how deep we want to dig into it in order to have those conversations as school leaders with parents and as parents with kids, as school leaders with kids, because this is happening literally every day in every school across our country.
Thank you for being part of this conversation, because it's true. The way that these things are affecting our kids, it does lead to dire and serious situations, and it affects them on a daily basis. So thank you. Our next question is addressing screen time specifically. Superintendent, what are your tips that parents can do to better manage screen time at home?
So this is hard because it's hard to talk about it as a superintendent without being a hypocrite in many ways. So for years, I was on kind of the forefront as a young principal and a young superintendent before all this grade kicked in, as pushing digital. And now we have it, and we have it pretty much ubiquitously in almost every district that we know of. So we are part of the problem in terms of screen time. And so I think it's just important to say that up front so it doesn't come across holier than thou or without acknowledging kind of that elephant in the room. In terms of the screen time that our kids have at home, the rule for me that I experience with my own kids and that I experience with myself as a grown man is that the less, the better, right? Let's just start there. The more that we can create authentic engagement with other human beings, it's way better than having kids on screen time. There's nothing more disheartening than seeing a group of 11, 12, 13-year-olds out, whether it be together at like a, arcade or whatever, and they're not hanging out with each other. They're hanging out with their phones. This is absolutely antithetical to everything we're trying to do in getting our kids ready to be productive members of society. So the less, the better. The biggest tip that I can give to a parent is there's nothing that we say that's going to matter half as much as what we model. And so if we are constantly on our phones, if we're constantly on our devices, then whether that is the rule or not, we are implicitly giving our kids permission to do the same. And so I find myself like having to put my phone down and away from me sometimes. I have twin 10-year-olds when they come up and talk to me. And that's just because I am fighting the urge of all of my applications and all of my notifications and all of the things that make me feel connected to many, many people and help me to feel important and to soothe my ego and do all those things, to put it down, to honor the relationships that I value the most that are right in front of me. And if I'm struggling with that as someone who is in tune to this and aware of the brain research as a 43-year-old person, what are we going to expect a 12-year-old to do? And so whenever anyone says, what should I do with screen time? For me, just start with modeling, because the less you're on, the more you're going to engage with them. The more you're going to engage with them, the less they're going to be on. So we can set arbitrary cut times and do all of those things. I think there's a place for that, but nothing is going to matter as much as limiting our own screen time and what we model in front of our kids.
Amazing takeaways. Less is better. I think, to say it so simply, we can get caught up. Like you said, you get 2 hours, you get 1 hour, let's just move towards less is better and more effective. And that modeling, I think you're right. As parents, we have that responsibility to model and be that example. So thank you. I just wanted to share really quickly as we get in for all of our listeners, some of the questions that we get across the country from parents. And in our live events, we love to answer those questions with quick little videos. So I'm going to share a quick little example. Just take a moment here to share an example of our live events and how we answer these parent questions. So we get the question, what makes these apps so addictive? And we answer that. Let's hear from some real students that we love to interview and hear what they have to say.
I think the most addictive part about social media is the constant new content that you see. You're always being introduced to new content, especially on apps like TikTok. I think the short videos, when they end so quick, you start to lose your ability to have a longer attention span. I've caught myself finding long TikTok videos and I can't stand watching the whole thing.
This generation really adapted to the fact that we don't have a large attention span. We really only concentrate for 30 seconds. So getting information that quickly, I think, enables us to just want to keep watching more. You don't even need to care about what they're presenting to you, but just the fact that you can sit there and watch it and you're oddly enjoying it. Social media is pretty addictive. People said it's like a drug. So it is addictive because you can't stop watching it. Your mind just plays on loop and it enjoys the fulfillment of everything firing in your brain to just keep watching. We love listening to students, and we have a student video project program. These students know, I mean, they understand their attention span. They understand how addictive it is. And so it's just great that these students are aware. I think they're more aware than we think they are as they get
100%.
older. Let's go ahead and hear one more video. Parents are asking, is social media positive or negative for a child? Let's hear from another student on this topic.
Part of what makes social media so addictive is how the algorithms are based on using content to judge whether or not someone's worthy, and using people's short attention spans to evaluate them as pieces of code, which also means that social media doesn't really care about your opinion, but really what keeps you on that platform longer, whether that's from likes, comments of engagement, sharing it to other people, or even just watching it through. The algorithm judges you as a piece of data, and whether or not someone should be praised for being controversial or thrown away for not being exciting enough, even if they're pouring their heart and soul into the content. It is a heartless beast. When I spend too much time on social media, that can look like being happy because something really cool happened in my friend's life. They went hiking. A friend of mine saw snow for the first time a couple of days ago, and it can make me feel very happy and energized. But other times, it can just be really draining. It can be really negative. It depends who I'm following. It depends what's being posted.
Again, these are real students. We start to address some of these questions that parents are asking us. You know, social media doesn't care about your opinion, just what keeps you on the platform longer. It's a heartless beast. But I love how she included that there's some positives too, because there is both to what we're dealing with. Would you agree, Superintendent?
That there's positives and negatives, 100%.
Yeah.
100%. I think there's positives and negatives. And I will say that it does care about your opinion, because that's how the algorithms are made. So I love what all the kids said, the three students that just said,
Yeah.
but the collective opinion matters. And so, while it may not be your individual opinion, it certainly doesn't care about your feelings, but the opinion of the mass does. And so if you are willing, and this is the way I break it down to kids all the time, either you are going to use social media or social media is going to use you. There is no in between. So if you are using it as a vehicle to connect and to collaborate and to contribute, social media can be incredibly useful and powerful. But if you're just using it as something, as a distraction, or to randomly decide to consume content, then make no bones about it. Social media is using you as another data point to help strengthen its algorithms to then direct its messaging toward other people that fit in your demographic circles and boxes that you check. And in that case, it can become pretty harmful.
Are you using social media, or is social media using you? Love it. Such a great takeaway. So just a quick update for those watching. If you're not a partner already, if you have questions or want to gain information, parents, if you need help keeping your kids safe and shining online, check us out at smartsocial.com. Our program provides weekly live parent events and replays. These students are a huge part of what we do. These team-led video lessons are available on all kinds of topics, and our premium parent newsletter. Here's just a quick couple quotes of what educators are saying. We had 50 social media incidents per year last year. Now we are down to 5 incidents, and I have more time to be a school principal again. The 50 plus live events give our community a chance to join on their phone without a software or a date time that works with their schedule, and plenty of replays. Again, we can't stay updated on all of the latest apps, so we appreciate Smart Social. They keep our 1,000 parents in the know. We do have live events scheduled throughout the year. We cover these topics such as disappearing messages, which is happening in November, optimizing parental controls. And we're going to be covering this topic of how do we help our students shine online? So what advice do you have for parents and students to help students use social media in a positive way so they can get the best job, career, and college opportunities?
So I think it's interesting, even in the hiring world, when it comes to teachers, a decade ago, we'd check social media and hope to find nothing, because then it meant it was clean, right? Nothing controversial. Now it's almost a red flag if you find nothing. So we are looking for people who are willing to contribute, are willing to have a point of view, are willing to have an opinion and to share it, and to be able to do so in a way that isn't necessarily eloquent, but is at least productive, right? And that we can have productive discourse back and forth. And so I will say for myself, as somebody who is a superintendent of districts, like the majority of my income comes from speaking and consulting. And that entire brand was built off of social media. And so if you are using social media, you can get your voice out. You can figure out what is unique. You can figure out the same way that we're kind of just talking about the algorithm and people's opinions. There is a great amount of research that goes in money that are spent by these companies to figure out what people want to consume and what they don't. And so if you are someone who is working to craft your message in order to hit and to resonate with more people, social media is going to do that for you for free, right? Like now you might pour your heart and soul into a video or content that you created, like that was said, that gets 8 views. That is the algorithm at mass telling you that that message didn't resonate. Now that's hard. And as an adult, that's much easier for me to take as someone who embraces and is used to failure than it is for a teen. So I'm not saying that the teens should just be tougher and create content and see what works. But I am saying that it is a sociological experiment happening right in front of us. And if you want to craft your messaging in order to create legacy and to have a positive impact and to create a name for yourself, there is no better vehicle. Social media in some ways is a very democratic process. If people like the messages, it will get spread wider and further. If people don't, it won't. And so it kind of gives you a real live test basis for everything you're going to do and create for free, which has literally never existed in our society before. And so for those that are going to become professionals, yeah, like you want to make sure your social media is clean. If you're going to be applying for a job at a Fortune 500 company in a few months, you probably shouldn't have your profile picture of you, doing drugs or drinking alcohol or whatever. Like there's some standard things. But if you do want to make a name for yourself and create content in a certain area, there's a ton of avenues to go about doing this that extend beyond just being a quote influencer, to do it in a productive way that's going to relate to what you hope to do with the rest of your life.
Such good advice. And I love how you started out that this is a platform that you're using as well in your own career. So thank you for that. Okay, our next question is avoiding strangers and dangerous situations. This is a very serious topic that we, really drives what Josh has been working on for the last decade, is really helping keep our kids safe. What is your advice to parents and students to avoid talking to strangers and avoid dangerous situations online?
So for me, it is being very tight with what we allow our students access to given their age. So does this mean that a 15-year-old can't get lured into a dangerous situation? Of course they can. Of course they can. I think it's exponentially less likely that a 15-year-old gets lured into that situation than a 9-year-old. And I think it's less likely that an 18-year-old gets lured in compared to a 15-year-old. So for me, the access that 8, 9, 10, 11, 12-year-olds have because parents are allowing it is a massive concern. What's the biggest thing that we can do to avoid these types of conversations is just to make sure that we're monitoring what our students have access to and monitoring as parents what the expectation levels should be. On almost every social media platform where this can occur, when you're signing up for it, it wants you to be at least 13 on almost every single platform, which means that a lot of kids are just blatantly lying in order to get access to it. And so that's where the conversation with my own kids has always started is, look, we can talk about my arbitrary rules that exist beyond 13. But up until 13, this is just about having integrity and not lying. And so that decision has been made for you. The company itself is telling you it's a bad idea. Don't do this. And so if you want to override their advice and the parental advice and lie, now we're into a completely different thing. The internet's a dark, scary place with people, full of people with great intentions that just want to connect and full of people with bad intentions that have different agendas at mind. For me, the best way that we can avoid this is keep people and our young people that do not have the critical thinking skills just because of the development of their frontal lobe, that's not an insult, to make discerning choices on this. Keep them off of these platforms as much as possible.
Superintendent, we are so grateful for your time and your words. That was beautifully said and really important, I think, having some of those conversations. And I love what you said about the 13-year-old cutoff. I think that's a way that parents can look at it that maybe they haven't thought of before. So thank you for that. Our next question is video games. What is your advice to parents and teens about video game safety and managing video game screen time?
So screen time comes back, and I'm saying this just transparently. there are weekends where my kids spend too much time online playing video games. And I know I should probably have set different boundaries, but there are weekends that it happens. When it comes time to get our family life back together and we have Sunday dinner and get prepared for the week, they are in a much worse spot. And I don't think that this is unique to my kids. I think this is pretty common in the parents in my districts and the parents that I'm friends with that talk about. So first we have to figure out, there's a diminishing return based on the amount of time that is spent. So I think we do need to keep our kids off of it from an all-day perspective. In terms of video game safety, two things on that. One, I don't think it's great that our kids are killing each other in video games all the time, but I also don't think that's like the ruin of society. That's just not my perspective on it. But I will say, just like we talked about in the last question of talking with strangers, people need to realize that there is a communicative social element to almost all video games now. It is different than from when I was playing Zelda, right, in 1988, where it was just me and my cartridge and maybe a buddy came over and we had some, Fanta and popcorn and played Zelda. That's not how it is. You're playing with the world. And so as much as we can say, hey, don't go on Snap or don't go on TikTok because you don't know who you're going to meet, trust me, those Xbox forums and those PlayStation forums are full of people that you don't want your kids meeting either. So I think that there's some real regulation that needs to go on with that. And that to me is the biggest safety issue when it comes to playing video games. The last thing I will say, this is going to sound crazy because I'm saying less. If your kids are into video games, as parents, take the time to play the video games with your kids a little bit. For me, about Q3 of a Madden game is when my kids finally start talking to me about their actual problems, right? It's a non-threatening environment of which we're focused on something else and conversation can actually happen. And so I don't think anyone will ever regret learning how to play a video game, to spend some more time in their son or daughter's room playing that, because the organic conversations that are going to come are extraordinarily beneficial.
I love that. Play with our kids, get curious, let them teach us. And I think that's it. What we want most is that connection and that open conversation. And I love that. Play with them. Get in there with them. That's great. Okay. Screen time and motivation. What is your advice to parents about the impact of screen time on motivation for homework, chores, and other tasks for teens to be successful?
So again, let's not overcomplicate this. We, and I'll say myself included, I've missed a couple workouts because I've been scrolling through reels and got caught up and going through, and then 40 minutes are gone and I missed my workout slot. So we all fall victim to this. So when we're talking about what we need to do, sometimes as parents, we have to tell our kids what to do. And I know that the entire point of parenting and my point, I raise my kids to leave and hope that they choose to come back and visit me, right? But I'm raising them to be prepared to leave. That means that at times I'm going to need to direct them what to do. So when I see the thing of the motivation for I don't know if that's a choice, right? For me, that's part of parenting. My kids are going to do their homework. They're going to do their chores. They're going to do their important tasks. And whether screen time is motivating them or not, then I need to be an equal and opposite motivator on the other side of that to ensure that they have some level of responsibility so that when they leave, they can be productive members of our society. Now, that might sound harsh, but that's just the way that I view it. Parenting is this isn't a democracy at times. There are things that you're going to get done because I do know better, or at least I believe I know better. And I mean this sincerely. I wish there were times where my parent was yelling at me and be like, all right, enough of the reels right now. Go get on the Peloton and get 40 minutes in. Your heart's going to thank you, right? I wish sometimes that was happening for me too, but I get sucked in. And so if I know that I can get sucked in as a smart, well-read, well-intentioned man, what do you think is going to happen to my 10-year-old and my 17-year-old if I'm not doing that? So at times we have to say the thing that our kid doesn't want to do, and they're going to roll their eyes and they might cuss at us under their breath, but it's going to get done and we're going to teach a lesson, and that's okay.
Thank you. Great words of wisdom there. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to our episode here today. We're smartsocial.com. Please visit us and check out our program. We have our weekly live parent events and replays, student-led video lessons, and our premium parent newsletter. You can gain access, find out how your school district can learn more and be part of our Smart Social program. Superintendent, thank you again for your time. Your insights were very helpful. We appreciate your time and what you brought to the table here today.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Well, thanks again for tuning in. We'll see you next time on our Superintendent Spotlights. Bye-bye.